Mortenax Blade has finally been released and is immediately loved by many. From his synergy with Ashwell in the new 4 team to his revival of Acheron in the meta, there is no shortage of praise about his performance. One of the claims is that he is Tribe of 4.x, a universally good support. And for a good reason. Both his 50% vulnerability and 30% death shred buffs can be used by every single team. And the only two archetypes that can't benefit from 50% damage buff are Break and Elation. Add to that his big personal AoE damage, high frequency of attacks, some sustaining capabilities, access to good Lycons, and a very strong vertical investment, and you have a seemingly great support in theory. But how true is it in practice? Watching the beta cycles for so long, I've learned to never make any strong conclusions about a unit until I'm able to test him myself. Which is what we'll do right now. Starting with my DOT team. I have a budget DOT core composed of E0, S0 High Silence and Kafka. In the early High Silence days, it was enough to use Cypher or Ruan Mei to clear quite comfortably. After Cyrene's release, she became my main upgrade for this team together with a free DHPT, which is why I skipped pulling for Black Swan after her Nova Flare, even though having a fully independent team would be quite nice. But at this point, even this is not enough for the hardest content in the game. While normal endgame is still pretty accessible, this team failed to 3-star previous night 1 and the same goes for the current one. So, using Blade to replace Cyrene was my first thought after I saw his kit. Also, calculations show that his buffs are stronger for this team than hers. Now, this night stage is actually designed for sustainers play, and it will be especially easy with Blade on the team, since that is one of his main advantages. And he can soak up all the single target hits from the enemies, so comparing him in that context would not be fair. Which is why we'll use Huo as a sustain, while Blade will be using Cypher's LC and a crit build with Pioneer set for some personal damage. Okay, this stage will have a bit of a slow start for Blade's ultimate, since these guys will be immediately broken and won't be able to act. And the bigger guy, his hit also won't be enough. Won't give enough energy at least. But that's okay. Also, using One Walk on Blade won't help here, because One Walk only advances one action by 40%. And Blade will need 2 action regardless. And he's already fast at about 170 plus speed, since he uses Cypher's LC. Finally. Also, Cypher's LC is not quite good in this stage, because enemies constantly die, and Blade is not always able to reapply Cypher's debuff on the new ones. So even though he's technically 2 cost here, his E1 will be much better. Damn it, I can't apply buff from the bigger guy on High Silence. Well, not much to do here besides trying to apply the buff on High Silence specifically, because most of the damage comes from her dots. And I guess another thing we can do is to try to make sure that smaller enemies will act as much as possible on their own, so that DIT could damage them without Kafka. Mm-hmm. 6 stacks. we won't be able
Good times. Time to say
to
bye.
reapply this one as well. Or maybe
Offer you a requiem.
if, yes, if we do this
Stand still.
and ult immediately. Okay.
Your cries rise. Relax.
The buff I think is 500. Yes. Not much actual changes with it. But it's a nice little thing. Okay, now we hold since his ult will end soon.
Stand still.
There's a very short window to reuse his ultimate when the camera switches on him. I think it's about 1 second. And usually it's not that important to have a 100% his ult uptime. In fact, sometimes you want to hold it for a bit to extend his window. But since we use dot team and enemies take dot damage on their turn as well, we actually want the uptime. Okay, how many? 6 out of 6. Oh, still then. Oh, come on. He has so many HP, so the healing proc isn't using him. Okay. Let's wait a bit.
Don't let waves open your throat. Be intoxicated. Stand still. Good times never last.
Okay, now we use high sealants
In the abyss's revels.
to get a buff.
Relax.
Yes, and blade. And finally Ho-Ho.
Say bye to breathing. Stand still.
One of the nice things about Blade is that his skill doesn't use this SP. And this team can be quite SP heavy. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I think I should hold for Blade's ultimate. His follow-up is far away for now.
Stand still. Offer you a requiem. Think with me. Good times. Time to say bye. Boom. Relax.
This will be our final meeting.
Yeah, I should use basic for SP. Okay, we also wait for another one. And now we use Hyacinth's ultimate.
Your cries rise. Stand still.
We want to make sure that Hyacinth gets the buff, but at this point it's better to just focus damage on this guy.
Good times. Time to say bye. Boom.
Return, you will serve as the tempering fire.
Relax.
Retake hold.
Cutting the net. Don't let waves open your throat.
Fiends or devil. I'll crush them all.
Yeah, we should use High Sealants to apply the buff from the new guy. Although, wait, no. Let's
Good
use
times,
Kafka
time to say
Ultimate
bye. Boom.
to focus all of her force on the big guy.
Stand still.
Blade eternal.
Relax.
Yes, just in time. Will that be enough? Let's even use slow-mo.
Return from death. Burn this broken shell. You will serve as the temporary fire.
Oh my. Well, one hit short of 3 stars. Given that my Serene team took around half a cycle more, I'd say that Blade is a mild but noticeable improvement, and he feels more comfortable to play. I don't need to wait for Serene's ultimate and I have less problems with skill point usage. Plus, his frequent AoE attacks help to apply Hycillon's dots, and his personal damage is not insignificant either, helping to clear small minions that may not have enough dots on them. More than that, a friend with Black Swan and E1 High Sealants took only around half a cycle less to clear. I'd say that E1 High Sealants is much stronger than Cypher's LC on Blade, so that makes him look like a comparable replacement for Black Swan, which is quite impressive and a solid proof of his universal value so far. All of this taken together is enough for me to not consider pulling for Swan in the near future and focus on vertical investment on High Sealants for the dot team. Plus, E1 Blade is also a full-on 20% increase in damage if I ever want to invest in him. But if you already have a full DOT core, there is no reason to pull him just for that alone. Now, let's look at the break. Originally, I wanted to try Blade as a replacement or side grade for Ruan Mei in my E0-S0 boot hill team. Even with E1-S1 Dahlia, he is in much need of help, partly because his kit is too old for the current meta and has some flaws, partly because my Fuke is also E0-S0. Unfortunately, the latter prevents Blade from being utilized to his fullest. He can't use Cypher's LC since it's already used by Fugue, and with it we are already at 100% dash rate for normal break and 115% dash rate for super break, so Blade can't use pearls either. And since I don't have another break light cone for Nihility, the best he has left is Battle Pass LC for 10% vulnerability. Plus, all of this reduces the value of Boot already weak vertical investment, even if I had any. In the end though, I ended up beating Sam in 3 cycles, which is actually the same number of cycles I achieved with E1 Ruan Mei, although the second team performed a bit better. There may be a rotation with Blade that will give me 2 cycles, but I don't think it matters for the sake of this comparison. This is a respectable clear time, all things considered. Yes, Ruan Mei is old and has glaring flaws, especially with her ult uptime, but she is still considered beast for the Boot Hill team. Seeing Blade almost catching up with her is another argument for his universality. But then I thought, why not use Blade as a main DPS in that team? Without any more yapping, let's go straight to the test.
Not yet time to
Please stay tuned.
come, night.
So, one of our goals is to make sure that the fish won't have its damage reduction state activated. We give full skill to HMC to help him with breaking. Basic on this guy, although it's not that important. What's important though is for Dahlia to ult before she acts with her skill. That way she will have enough energy for the second wave.
Immolated my death. Have we met? Clouds
And we hold with Fugues, and now we use her ultimate.
dreams of a. Let us dance once.
And damage reduction denied. We can finally use HMC's ultimate. And actually we wanted
Let's improvise.
to hold for him. because we don't want to kill the enemies too quickly, because Blade needs to have some stacks for his follow-up. Just like that, most of the enemies are dead.
No holding back.
Okay, we don't want to activate the fish. Actually, we don't care because it has freeze on it.
Dream vanished.
Yep.
Immolated my death.
A drawn sword knows no rest until
Now we use basic.
Want to betray me?
take your positions.
Yeah, should be enough. Nice.
Initiate investigation.
Now we can use Dahlia's ultimate to implant the fire weakness on the bugs.
So beautiful.
And destruction unfold.
Blade eternal. Return. You will serve as the tempering fire. Retake hold.
Very satisfying. After that, we just punch him until he dies.
Let's seize this fine moment. Unite our goals.
It's also important to manage Blade's HP,
Let's improvise.
and because of that we won't use the skill on him anymore, because he will need some HP to re-enter his ultimate. And he wants also some HP to be able to use his follow-up.
Cloud scatter.
Take your position. Blade eternal.
Want to betray me?
Tempered 1,000 times.
And he still has one follow-up in him. Maybe even two. Let's see.
Dream vanished.
Stay in step. Let's improvise. Renewed is let the show begin.
Wait anymore. Memories too has
Can we get a small mo?
when all dies. It's so beautiful.
Purgatory. Take hold.
Nice. So, 2 cycles at 6 cost and with pretty much no RNG. And yes, this result is actually better than that of my dedicated break DPS, however outdated he is. Obviously, the boss is very favorable to Blade, but I still think his impressive performance is hard to dismiss, given that being a break unit is not at all his main role. It's also another example of how valuable Dahlia vertical investment can be. It allows me to not use a dedicated break DPS. Blade's main flaw here is his expiration time. Of course, all sustainless teams have it, but since most of Blade's kit requires him to lose HP, he will have less actions at his disposal. And if the fight takes too long, he will not be able to regain enough energy to use his ultimate again, which will make him totally useless. That said, a guard relic set can help with that, since it will heal him a bit at every turn, but more on that later. Also, high team investment can help to pretty much ignore that flaw. Still though, Blade also has an advantage. As an agility, he can use good Lycans, especially break ones, that will buff both his and main DPS's damage. His E1 helps to extend his use window and gives everyone 20% respawn, which a break team can fully utilize. And he can also break the toughness bar, and not by a small amount, especially if you can use his ultimate. His follow-up does 10 AoE toughness damage, with another 20 spread over 4 hits, and he can still do normal basics for another 10. For context, Fugue's enhanced basic does the same 10, as well as Ruan Maze, who will rarely even use it. I would probably not pull him specifically for your main break team if you already have all the main supports, but if you don't have them, for example if you pulled Firefly or Daria recently, but don't have Fugue, or if you have 2 break teams, or otherwise intend to pull Blade for different reasons, he can be a good and fun addition to your break roster, at least for some time. Now, what about some classic grid-based DPS? A Peerless Gem hasn't received any updates to her team for over a year at this point. E0 Herta was struggling after the meta shifted from AoE content and the HP inflation started to catch up to her multipliers. But even at AoE, seeing her fail to efficiently kill the bosses that were tailor-made for her, like Flame Reaver, was quite painful. I don't want to doom post too hard. E2 Herta with her premium team can still handle most of endgame content outside of few single target bosses. And even at E0 she clears pure fiction with her 40k score, which is her main niche. But the reality of not having any support for such a long time is showing, and the trade-offs of her kit start to hurt more and more. Blade has managed to revive Acheron, who were facing the same problems for quite a while now. And even though he is not a dedicated Herta support, his buffs are strong and he has frequent AoE attacks, which is what Herta wants. The main question is, who is he replacing? Surely not Tribi, especially since mine is at E1 S1 investment level. Well, let's test him by replacing RMC in a sustainless pure fiction run. For comparison, the team with RMC, who also uses Cyrene signature, clears with one cycle left. What will the Blade team achieve?
Take a look.
Okay, so this is another stage where we don't really worry about energy for Blade at the start, because the enemies will hit him right away. Just like that. Let's also wait for another hit. Oh, we would have to wait regardless. Okay. We generally want to use our ultimates when it's someone else's turn. That way the enemies with cleaves won't be able to use the counter if any of them will stay alive. Also, one of the nicest things about this team is the fact that both Tribi and Blade buff the entire team. So Mini Herta's damage is actually quite noticeable, even on wave 3, and she helps a lot to clear the small enemies. Okay. Mini Herta should help out. Yeah, and we'll clear everyone with the skill. This is probably one of the best end games to use Windset on Blade, because this will be a race for time, especially for him, since he uses his own HP. So cramming up as much actions as we can in his damage window is very important. Okay. Almost. And the energy will go to Mini Herta. That's okay. So this is probably the last Blade's ultimate we will use, at least for the damage, because he will soon die. Nah. Always a bit annoying to trying to predict whether Mini Herta will do her spin or not. Okay, Yeah, let's use trigger. Blade will use his last follow. And we hold. So, already at third of HP at the end of a 0 cycle. And we maybe will be able to squeeze the end until... Let's see. No. Well. Okay. Yeah, we use skill. Hopefully this last combo will be the end. Let's use every single last one before the Herta. Don't be 1%, please. Come on. Oh, well, yeah. Archer, give us the last bit of energy. Half cycle short from a 0 cycle, and it had way less RNG than the RMC run, where I had to restart several times because the team kept dying closer to the end. Plus, the blade has room to grow vertically, improving both his own and team's damage output. Without doubt, it's a huge improvement to the team, and potentially not only in the context of pure fiction performance. For example, in the new Starward mode Apocalyptic Shadow, the same team helped me achieve a score of 3700. The team where MC couldn't even survive it. But since Blade is supposed to be Tribi of 4.x, I was curious, what will happen if Frill plays her? This is the result. 37k with Blade the only one to survive. I think that, if not for constant AoE damage from the enemies, the whole team could have survived and finished the job with the score of 40. This is quite impressive considering that Blade is just E0S0 compared to Tribi being E1S1. And as good as Tribi and her E1 is for Herta in general, particularly by helping her funnel the damage into one main target, we're at a stage when Herta actually needs some help in her AoE. One of the main reasons why she struggled against Scarabass in the previous Apocalyptic Shadow is that her multipliers on the side target were too low and she was unable to kill all of the bugs quickly enough. But with Blade's much stronger buffs to all of her damage, and with the help of his own, he could have completely solved this problem. So, should you pull him for the Herta? I'd say, if you are dedicated to using her, pulling at least E0A0 is a good investment. If anything, he will help her dominate in pure fiction for longer. Otherwise, we just got another confirmation of how universal he can be. Now, to finish off the video, I want to showcase his capabilities as a main DPS. But before that, an honorable mention that I was able to test. Blade is now the strongest debuffer for Ratio. His buffs for him are approximately 20% stronger than Cypher's at E0S0, and his personal damage has an actual impact on the team's performance. He's not doing wonders for the Scholar, and it's not enough to make him meta-relevant at low investment, but for example, I got a 3500 score in a new Apocalyptic Shadow with E0S1 Ratio and E2S1 Robin, and Blade's E2 is a huge upgrade for that team. It also showcases the way you can use Blade with DHPT. And yes, his signature helps, but what also helps is the guard set. It heals a character for 8% HP when he is at 50% or less. Since Blade has an inherent 50% healing buff, that 80% becomes 12. This allows him to use his skill twice after every turn. And with DHPT signature, the healing is more than enough to allow Blade to use his skill without any problem. Granted, I wouldn't say it's worth it, unless your team is getting a lot from using DHPT, for example maybe because he's E2. But if you're like me and forgot that you have 300 guard pieces that you never dismantled, well, you can finally get some use from them. At the very least, you can create pieces with no substats just to help your blade survive for longer in a sustainless run. Also, watch this. Firstly, yeah, I was surprised too that everyone survived after this hit. Hoyo nerfed the damage of this attack quite a bit, which is good. But secondly, this is more than 50% HP, and that is because Blade uses a healing body. I got the idea from a post on an Acheron subreddit. I guess since Blade technically heals himself after being killed, the 34% healing bonus applies to that healing as well, and 50% HP becomes 67. The highest in Planet set bonus also adds up, making it 77 HP. That said, I wouldn't bother with the planar, and the healing body is probably only useful in some specific sustainless runs. Still though, it's a neat interaction that I wanted to showcase. Okay, now let's see how well Blade performs as a main DPS. And we will test him on none other than the Pollux Avalation, Pom Pom. Okay, Sunday acts first, and it allows us to guarantee Blade's first ultimate without any action. And it might guarantee us the second one at least, if we're lucky, but more on that later. So we want the small ones to survive until first Blade's ultimate to maximize the value of E1 Tribi, since it depends on the enemy count. Okay, will they all survive? Damn. Okay, we can use basic and ult. Almost 3 million. Mm-hmm. So Blade right now can use his ultimate freely. That's because Sunday with 138 speed acts right after his zone ends. And he got just enough energy for his ultimate again. Just as planned. This is basically a 2-turn ultimate for Sunday, which is of course not guaranteed in normal circumstances, but since Blade soaks up so much hits to himself, some of them hit Sunday, it helps a lot. Okay, now we want to generally do the same thing. We want to use Blade's ultimate when there are at least 2 small enemies on the field. Okay, here we go. First gone. Truly, this enemy is Pollux Evolution. Can't wait until he is gone. And right now we don't have enough energy, unfortunately. Nice.
tempered 1,000
And
times.
Hyacinth also immediately right after. Actually, I should have waited until the second wave. Okay, stock's all gone.
Retake hold.
Heard the call. Trinity is before me.
Unfortunately, I have to use it.
Guide you on your path.
Blade eternal. Return. You will serve as the tempering fire. Retake hold.
And now we just do damage and wait. That's the entire boss, unfortunately.
Blade eternal. Return. You will serve as the tempering fire.
That's still 2 million. Quite nice for an pretty much fully AoE boss, or AoE minion. Okay, first phase done. It's always usually better to use Hyacinth's ultimate on her turn to prolong the duration.
Retake hold. Blade eternal.
Doubt farewell.
Okay, now we hold his ultimate.
Retake hold. Tempered 1,000 times.
Okay, one stock quickly gone. Will it be 3 cycles? Maybe. Okay, 5 targets. So we want.
Trinity is before me.
Drawn sword knows no rest until death.
How much energy? Okay, let's use.
Return from death.
Kill both. Why?
More. Watch over you. Guide you on your path.
No, it won't be 3 cycles, unfortunately. But close. Okay, let's wait for a wave.
Return. You will serve as the tempering fire. Blade eternal.
Come on. Another 1%. Close to 3 cycles, which is almost as good as the performance of my top team with Finan. Considering the Elation Shield and quite a heavy single target focus of the fight, this performance is very respectable. That said, as a main DPS, Blade really wants both Tribe and Hyacinth, or at least Tribe, and preferably E1. Although we can safely expect, I think, that new units will be released for us to use with him. So, is he truly a universal unit? Yes. And I want to emphasize the truly part. Because in all honesty, Tribe never was universal in the first place. Not to that extent at least. When she came out, the meta shifted heavily to AoE content, and stayed that way for quite a long time. Plus, after the release of Hyacinth, together they became the dreaded wheelchair, which was only a wheelchair for a couple of patches due to highly favorable fights. And please, don't begin another wheelchair brain rot with Blade and Ashvale. After the shield cooled off and new teams began to emerge, Tribe quickly shifted to her main focus, that being the Herta support, AoE content and some specific uses in follow-up teams and Zero Cycle. Yes, her buffs are universal, but weren't that strong even at her release. Cypher's was actually a bit stronger. Almost half of Triby's utility was behind her personal damage, which could only shine with Hyacinth and preferably other buffers on the team. In her follow-up spam, which often wasn't enough for Fei Xiao teams for example to compensate for her weaker buffs. And in her very strong E1, if you had it. But the break teams didn't care for her. DOT teams could only use her efficiently in AoE content with her E1. Other meta characters like Faidan could only use her effectively when specific conditions were met. And someone like Maidei used her mostly because he didn't really have good options in the first place. Yes, Blade also has his shield right now, but I think all of these examples taken together paint for him a much stronger picture. He is a great buffer, his personal damage is meaningful even in hypercarry teams with no extra buffs, his utility is unlocked behind AoE content even though his damage is focused around it. He doesn't need any vertical investment to shine in any team, but his vertical is still very powerful, and he has access to a more variety of light cones. Yes, he doesn't have access to DDD, but I think its value is overblown, especially in today's meta. And if you weren't lucky enough to have at least one copy of DDD, or if you didn't pull Triby's signature, her other options were pretty sad. To compare them using numbers, Triby's performance is 10 out of 10 in AoE content and as a Herta support. But on average, it is 5 or 6 in other teams and even lower in Break for example. Blade, on the other hand, is 10 out of 10 with Astral and Acheron, but around 8 in almost everything else. This is what makes him truly universal. So, should you pull him? The answer to this question is always inherently personal. But I can tell you this, as someone who has been playing this game since day one. There didn't exist a single character that could provide as much value per 1 cost for an account as Mortenax Blade. If you're a new player and only starting to build your teams, he will carry you as a support and DPS in any endgame content. If you're an old player with several build teams, he will help you juggle your supports in the new meta and will probably be an upgrade in some situations. The only good non-personal reason not to pull him, at least at E0 S0, is if you already have 3 strong teams, have more specific vertical plans for upgrading them, and don't look into building a new one. And of course, if you don't plan to use Ashrail or Acheron. The question stands though, is it balanced? Is he too OP? I don't think so. He is a natural answer to the current meta progression. We are at the point when we need 3 teams to fully clear even the normal endgame. We now have break teams, DOT, follow-up, remembrance, elation, and many variations of creed archetypes. We have AoE content, single target content, and everything in between. We have numerous stage buffs for different elements, attacks, damage types, and abilities. Many people say that HSR is shifting towards creating archetype-specific characters, who can only be used in their dedicated teams. And it's true to some extent, but the meta shift towards variety and a much stronger eidolons on new characters is counteracting it. And the release of someone like Blade, I think, shows that Hoyo's plans are not that narrow. For example, in the current Anomaly arbitration, I would normally use the DOT team with my Cyrene on night 1, because it doesn't favor crit builds with no follow-up. But with the release of Blade, I can use him with DOT and free my Cyrene to play with the Mighty on night 2. Or, in the new Apocalyptic Shadow, I can use Blade on side 1 for his debuff application. Or I can use him on side 3 with my Herta due to his huge buffs that allow me to play sustainless. While side 1 will be handled by Break, who can also apply debuffs. If another content releases, and one fight favors AoE hits and ult uses, while other favors follow-up damage, I can use Blade in either one, depending on what characters I have. Having this kind of character, in my opinion, is very healthy in the current expanded meta. And I, for one, am very glad that this character is Blade.